I'm James Hood, and this is my portfolio. A little bit about me. I came to Barry wanting to be a engineering major, and I did like the tour around campus, and I was with my parents, and we were like after the tour, we were just kind of walking around campus, trying to find any other interesting sites we could. And we stumbled upon this place in like behind a bunch of barns called Hackberry. And we walked in, and one of the first things we saw was this guy with pink hair come up to us and be like, "Hey, let me show you around." And like there's like this wall of 3D printers, and I mean throughout the tour, it just more and more cool things were popping up, and it started to really capture my interest. And so um, further along into my freshman year, taking engineering classes, I wasn't really into it because it felt like we were learning a lot of things, but then when it got to like an exam, then it was kind of like a make or break situation. We weren't really like it didn't feel like we were implementing the information as much. I wanted to kind of do something more hands-on. And so that's when I thought, okay, maybe I should check out this creative tech major. So I sophomore year took 101, and we one of our first assignments we had about 10 minutes to make some like foam core prototype of something functional. And thinking of ideas on the fly was something I was always kind of pretty bad at. But over the course of the class, I felt myself getting better at it. So the class kind of pushed me out of my comfort zone a lot, and I really liked the kind of development of that skill, along with other skills that it introduced. And yeah. So my theme is experimental integration of technology in room design. Um, I knew that I'd be spending a lot of time in my dorm room, so I wanted to make things for it to kind of integrate technology into it. And like the projects that I've been working on, um, I didn't really put up a lot of decorations, so I thought, okay, some cooler decorations would be ones that like are interactive or at least look really nice and glow. So my first project is the room design or room 3D model. My sophomore year, I moved into one of the smallest dorm buildings, or the building with the smallest rooms on campus. And the walls were like concrete. It looked a little bit like a prison cell. So I was like, how do I move the furniture around to make it more of a pleasant space to be in and also optimize what little room I had? So at the time, I was taking a Fusion 360 class. And so I thought, oh, why don't I just 3D model the room? That way I don't have to move around a bunch of heavy furniture to see how things look. And so in the first image, that's how I had it at the very beginning. And I felt like there wasn't much room to do with or to work with. And then so in this image here, I lofted the bed and up on the furniture, and I had enough space to put a life-size bookshelf in there. And so, yeah, I didn't actually have a grandfather clock in my room either, but that was something I also thought would be cool to add. Um, and yeah. Um, so for my second project, this was for a hackathon class where we had 4 hours to make something and present it. And this was a class where we were just kind of given free range to do whatever. And so I thought, okay, what's something that I like and I think is cool? Well, explosions are cool. I think everyone kind of likes explosions or seeing them. So I set out to make as realistic of a model of an explosion that I could. This was inspired by an Etsy project that I saw, and originally that project was like a desk size lamp. So I thought, okay, I'll try to make it larger. That way it's brings more attention to it. And so I modeled the frame of it with chicken wire and then stapled that like interior chicken wire frame to a wooden base because it was very top heavy and I didn't want it falling over. I then took polyfill and covered the outside of the chicken wire to give it a more of a cloudy shape and also feel. And then I spray painted it with gray spray paint to make it more reminiscent of an explosion, giving it kind of a smoky feel. And I also coiled an LED strip on the inside that glowed orange so that it could look as close to an explosion as I could. Um, for my third project, I created an infinity mirror. An infinity mirror was something that I never really knew how it worked. I always wondered, so I thought, okay, I guess I'll just make one for the hackathon, and I thought it would also be fun to present. This was also inspired by Etsy project. I basically laser cut acrylic and a hexagon or two acrylic pieces, and then put on the inside of them a one-way window tint, like on the inside of cars, or that cars use for window tint. And so that way light could flow in from one side, but not the other, and it would reflect back on itself. And then I lined the inside of the acrylic with LEDs. I gave it this hexagon shape instead of a square because I think hexagons are a little bit cooler. It'd stick out more, but also because the LEDs, I wanted them to match the shape better and not have like a sharp corner that it had to turn. And so it held its shape better. But I connected it to an Arduino. And so that way I could use the rainbow LED library to give it a better pattern and more captivating and fun to look at. For my capstone, I pivoted over to more of a hobby-focused project because I wanted to focus on a problem that I had with a hobby that I think could make it better and more beginner-friendly and also enjoyable. So I set out to create some magnetic brakes for skateboard. Basically, I lined the inside of the wheel with magnets and had an electromagnet on each side that would pull on the wheel magnets and slow the wheel down. And then I also had buttons on the top of the board so that you could press the button and activate it whenever. For my first design goal, I set out to stop the skateboard faster without modification, or sorry, yes, stop it faster with modification than without. And I got the electromagnet as close as I possibly could to the wheel using a 3D printed frame that I had to adjust the height for a lot. And so I did some bench testing at the very beginning or early on, and with the weight of the with the weight of the magnets attached to the wheel, it created an 18% slowdown, or it slowed down the wheel 18% faster than without the magnet turned on. And so with testing on the board itself, the electromagnet didn't create enough of a difference to really create much of a slowdown. Results were pretty negligible. I had 3 users test it along with myself, and I think the weight of a person being on it was a lot more to account for the board. So And then for design goal 2, I wanted to integrate the device comfortably. And so this was mostly to do with the pedal. I originally had it in the middle of the board, but users were saying that it kind of threw off their balance because they had to pivot their foot to the middle of the board, and their legs were spread out less, so they had less of a center of balance. So I shifted it over to the end of the board, so that way it was more convenient to reach and it didn't throw off your center balance. There's one of my users, by the way. Um, and then for the third design goal, I wanted to create braking smoothly enough to where it wouldn't just throw the user off the board. At the starting point, I put the magnets on one side so that way you could orient the board to where the magnet would either, or the braking system would be stopping from the front of the board or the back of the board. And this was just so that I would be able to adjust going on later into the project, and it would be less of an issue. For my future outlook, I plan on just taking a break from school for a little bit, and then just applying to whatever tech jobs I can. I want to travel if I can. There's a lot of growth in the tech industry, and I feel like creative tech has taught me that putting yourself in a new environment is really, and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is the best way to learn and pick up new skills and learn things that you thought you would never learn before. And so, yeah.